Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Genius Pod. Today I'm joined by former Chief Executive Mr. C.Y. Leung.
Hello.
So Mr. Leung is the former Chief Executive and is now the Vice Chairman of the National Committee of the Chinese Political Consultative Conference. So welcome to the Genius Pod, Mr. Leung.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we start, be sure to follow us on Instagram and check out our Google site as well. So first, let's talk about some of your Chief Executive days. So first of all, what's it like to be Chief Executive of Hong Kong?
Hectic. A lot of work and there are a lot of crises to manage,
Yeah.
big ones and small ones. And you can't really plan your own time. Difficult to know whether you have the free time that you thought you would have when you start your day. Yeah, because the phone may ring and suddenly there's something that happened in Hong Kong and you need to deal with it straight away.
All right. So obviously, it's been a chaotic role for you. So what have you been focusing on being after? What have you been focusing on after being the chief executive?
There were four pillars. I mean, they were all in my election manifesto. One obviously was housing. The second one, poverty alleviation. Third, elderly services. And fourthly, the environment. And within the environment portfolio, mainly air quality.
Okay. So let's talk about the GBA project, as I noticed that you've been also talking about that a lot.
Yeah.
So how do you view the future of the GBA project and its impact on Hong Kong teenagers?
Well, GBA is a huge platform. The thing about Hong Kong is that we have, as a city, more or less inevitably, we have a narrow economic base. So if you are in the field of science and technology, innovation, etc., in a city where the economy is mainly financial services, trade, professional services, etc., you need to look outside of Hong Kong. It's not dissimilar to the situation in London, for example. If you are a university graduate in London with a science degree or technology degree, engineering degree, you have limited career paths and you have to look outside of London. But we are in a similar situation in Hong Kong, and therefore young people are encouraged to look outside Hong Kong. Now, whether you move to other countries or you move, which is really in our neighborhood, to cities in Guangdong, in the GBA region for these opportunities. Otherwise, there could easily be a mismatch between what you study for and what your career developments allow you to do.
Okay, so do you have any advice for any Hong Kong teenagers in how they can take advantage of the GBA project in order to be successful?
Yeah, you really need to understand a lot more about the opportunities that the GBA cities, by the way, we shouldn't just call them GBA cities because Hong Kong is one of the GBA cities. I mean, I believe we're talking about the GBA cities outside of Hong Kong, the Guangdong GBA cities. We need to find out a lot more. We need to do research, desktop research, reading up all these new policies coming up and all the new projects coming up in the Guangdong cities in the GBA area. And also to be there yourself to find out the sort of lifestyle there, the price levels, the cost of living, and also to make friends. There's no substitute for on the ground research. There isn't enough, even before we were hit by the pandemic and therefore the related travel restrictions. There wasn't enough interaction between the two sides. A lot of the school students that I talk to in Hong Kong rarely visit the GBA Guangdong city. So I think that should change. And you have to be there to realize what are on offer.
So what role do you think Hong Kong teenagers actually play in the GBA project?
Well, a lot. Actually the size of the Hong Kong population living on the mainland, which includes the GBA Guangdong cities, is much bigger than what Hong Kong people generally think. According to the latest national census, 370,000 Hong Kong people live permanently in the mainland of China. And the GBA Guangdong cities account for the bulk of this population. And this is not counting the hundreds of thousands of people who crisscross between Hong Kong and Shenzhen across the boundary. Now, 370,000 Hong Kong people permanently residing in the whole of the mainland of China is about 5% of the population, 1 in 20. And that's a sizable figure. And I go to the Guangdong GBA cities a lot, and I come across people who are in the various occupations. And the range of occupations that they are in is actually much wider than, again, what Hong Kong people generally think it is. And you have people not just in the professional services, not just in trade or real estate, but really nearly all occupations that are available in Hong Kong are available in the Guangdong cities.
Right. So let's talk more specifically about the GBA project. So the Nansha Project. So can you provide some details regarding the Nansha Project? Because I noticed that you've been recently talking a lot about the Nansha Project.
Oh yes, Nansha is actually very close to Hong Kong. It is the southernmost district of Guangzhou city, which is the municipal city of Guangdong province. It's so close that by high-speed train, it's only 35 minutes away from Kowloon. And you could actually daily commute. If you want to relocate, obviously you can. Otherwise, you can sort of commute on a daily basis because the train ride is only 35 minutes. And the land area of Nansha is about 803 square kilometers, which is about 70% of Hong Kong's land area, and it's actually bigger than the whole of Singapore. So that's how big and how close it is. Because it's big, it has a diverse range of economic activities, from shipbuilding to container terminal, which handles more or less the same number of containers as the Kwai Chung terminal of Hong Kong. It has a cruise home port, so that's on the marine side of things. It has the biggest car manufacturing plant of Toyota outside of Japan, and this car plant in Nansha has been producing over 1 million cars a year. The University of Science and Technology of Hong Kong is opening their Guangzhou campus, and is known as Hong Kong UST brackets Guangzhou, and is opening on the 1st of September, which is less than a month away. And in its first year, it will have 1,000 postgraduate students, and next year will open its doors to undergraduate students. Less than 2 kilometers away from Hong Kong UST Guangzhou is the first and only non-profit seeking school for Hong Kong students, and it's a boarding school with 1,200 boarding places and total capacity of 1,600 places. So these are the things that are happening. And also, I should also mention that HSBC is building its global training center in Nansha. And I would invite your audience to study, use the word study on purpose, a full page advertisement in the South China Morning Post Friday last week. There are a lot of details there, which in terms of what are already in Nansha, and also in terms of future projects and policies of Nansha, incentives that they provide.
So how would you think that the Nansha would cooperate, like fit in really well into the GBA project?
Well, Nansha is just part of Guangzhou, and Guangzhou is one of the 9 Guangdong GBA cities. the different districts in the different cities offer very different opportunities. And there are certain element of coordination as to who does what in the Guangdong GBA cities. So in the very limited time that we have in this interview, I would go through all these, but I just like to emphasize the fact that Shenzhen is different from Guangzhou, Guangzhou is different from Zhuhai, and Zhuhai is different from Zhaoqing, for example, and all these are the Guangdong GBA cities. So our audience should really to read up as much as possible and Google for the latest information on these cities.
Okay, so what impacts do you think that the Nansha Project will have on Hong Kong teenagers, and how would you like convince them to go?
Well, we provide a much bigger platform for Hong Kong young people in terms of their studies. I should mention that this figure applies to the whole of the mainland, and not just Nansha or the GBA Guangdong cities. This summer, according to the Education Bureau of Hong Kong government, about 9.8% of our DSE school leavers have enrolled with mainland universities. 9.8%, so it's about 1 in 10. And this percentage is the highest ever. So don't think for a moment that Hong Kong young people tend to shun the mainland. It's not true. There are a lot more opportunities on the mainland, particularly in the GBA Guangdong cities, because these cities are so close to Hong Kong. I mean, Nansha could commute to and fro on a daily basis. And outside of Nansha, you could obviously stay and work in these cities and come back every weekend. So in terms of studies, in terms of career development after you finish your studies, and in terms of leisure activities, you could obviously hike in our country parks, and we have very good country parks in Hong Kong. But you could go to, for example, the wetland park in Nansha, or you go to the huge water park in Zhuhai, and this is the Chamlian water park. It's bigger and I think offers a very good value for money than the ocean park in Hong Kong. So in terms of all aspects of life, whether it's education, leisure, career development, I think young people should find out for themselves, and they should be there on the ground as soon as the travel restrictions as a result of the pandemic are further relaxed or totally lifted. Be there, go there, and see for yourself.
All right, so let's talk about some of the government engagement and misconceptions on the GBA. So I've noticed that obviously through that you've been talking about how the taxes are pretty good in Nansha, but I noticed through a survey, which is a bit of a while ago though, that through the Hong Kong Guangdong Youth Association, that 51% of the interviewed teenagers actually don't want to go to the Guangdong GBA cities. And one of their main concerns actually includes their issues with taxes. And obviously, this is a misconception. So how would you think that? Do you think more engaging and effective promotion from the government regarding the GBA project eliminates some of these misconceptions?
I think young people should be more proactive.
Yeah.
We live in a pretty transparent society. The GBA Guangdong cities actually offer a lot of information on their website. So look up and read up and go there and find out for yourself before you make up your mind. As to the result of the opinion poll, I would say this. Obviously, we don't want everyone amongst our youth population to leave Hong Kong and go elsewhere, whether GBA, Guangdong cities or other cities, because we need people in Hong Kong. And there are courses for horses. Not everyone is suitable to live outside of Hong Kong, and obviously the majority of Hong Kong people would find better career opportunities in Hong Kong. What we are trying to say is that Hong Kong people, including our young people, should know what other opportunities there are outside of Hong Kong, and they should make objective assessments of the suitability of these places outside of Hong Kong to their career and life aspirations. And they need to make these objective assessments and decisions based on as a complete understanding of the opportunities as possible.
All right, so we're gonna be talking about mainly on the government now. So the border region obviously was not really developed compared to Shenzhen in Hong Kong, so in the New Territories North. So there are criticisms made by a LegCo member Edward Lau Kwok Fan, saying that in the border region has not even changed in the last 50 years. It wasn't really developed in the last 50 years. You think it's a little too late for the government to start developing the northern region of Hong Kong now?
I wouldn't use the word border because the line between Hong Kong and Shenzhen and the rest of China is not a border, it's a boundary because Hong Kong and the rest of the country and the mainland are not two countries. We are part of the same country, and therefore that line is not a border. Now, the north boundary region provides land for Hong Kong's future development and expansion. There's no reason why that region should not be developed, subject of obviously to the usual transport and environment and other infrastructure considerations. The unique characteristic of this region is that it is very close to Shenzhen, which is part of the mainland, and therefore that could be an interesting connection between what Hong Kong does and what Shenzhen and beyond could offer. And so I think that region is not just a new supply of land, development land, but it is also a useful platform for collaboration between the mainland and Hong Kong.
All right, so we're gonna finally sum up and do a quick summary to summarize our two main discussion topics. So overall, how would you summarize the GBA and its smaller project, which is the Nansha Project?
Well, forget about what you read in the Apple Daily, 蘋果日報. Go and see for yourself what life is about in the GBA Guangdong cities. I think it's interesting, offers good prospects going forward. And in any event, particularly young people in Hong Kong need much bigger space to grow into than the 1,100 square kilometers that Hong Kong itself offers.
How would you suggest the government's next steps, and if you think they can do better in supporting the GBA project and being more like?
I think firstly, government leaders and civil servants should spend more time on the mainland themselves before they could understand the very nature of the interactions between Hong Kong and the mainland, including the GBA Guangdong cities, and before they could formulate policies to encourage more collaboration between the two sides.
All right, so I think that's it for today. So thanks for joining me on the Genius Pod, Mr. Leung.
Thank you, Carlos.
Okay, so before we end this video, be sure to follow us on Instagram and also check out our Google site. Bye.
Goodbye.